Hi guys, welcome to my channel for a special video. This video will be a review of the second beta of the balance update. So to be very concrete, this will be moving out of the beta. So this is the final changes. After that there will be the gold version, but there shouldn't be only very minor changes between what I will show you today and what will be the final version. So we are moving out of beta. This is getting official. I've been asked to cover for army, so I picked the army that I know the most. I thank a lot Lichmeister, my good friend, who provided me some expertise on Vampire and Beastard. He gave me a couple of explanations what he thought about them. I took a couple of notes, so I think that should be also interesting as well. And obviously I know very well Ogre Khans and Infernal Dwarves. Before we start this, I think are quite interesting to understand a little bit more the process and what have been done. So I've put as a reminder what is the top tier list that has been published, so you don't see Carry, but before the new book they were clearly one of the bottom army, I guess. And my understanding with this rectangle that you see in blue is that the top 5 are, so to say, the top tier, and the bottom 5 the bottom tier, and the middle is the mid tier. That's how I understand it, and you will see the amount of changes also reflected that. So as a reminder, the army that I will cover here are ID, considered according to me as a top tier, Ogre Khans mid tier, and then VC and Beastard rather bottom tier. So what they told us is the second update is used to adjust any problems, fixed any problematic combination that were missed. They listen also feedback, so they receive feedback and consolidated feedback from the ACS, so they listen to the community. Upper tier army in the first update, they receive an increase in point, but lower tier list did not see the decreases that they expected. And they even mentioned that a couple of low tier lists actually increase in point, which was not intended. They also precise that this data was supported generally by both the community and expert feedback as well. So as you can see, there are multiple sources of feedback that are coming in the process. It's not only the community complaining and leading to a drop in points, it's data, community, expert feedback. And with this in mind, in order to try to improve army book balance, a flat % decrease was applied generally to the middle and low tier army book. To my understanding, and you will see this is noticeable between ID and OK, this is why also I set this limit. From OK, Ogre Khans, Ogre Kingdom, you see that there is this flat decrease in a lot of units, which is nice, with specific high power model excluded. So they pay attention to that as well. We did this to try to avoid further increase in top tier books, which we know player hate. Makes total sense for me. Here we have a precision. Since I'm covering VC, we got a precision regarding the Strigoi, because they remove from the Strigoi, you will see there are some down in points, and they were afraid that this could lead to some pretty insane Alpha Strike Vanguard spam list, basically. So as you can see, they didn't miss that. It was not a playstyle that was intended for VC, so they took that away. You can read that if you want, and obviously you can then debate on the VC forum once it's out if you don't understand, but for me this makes sense. So they, like they wrote here, rip this band-aid off before the lab of the VC, which is for me, I think it's fair, but we'll see what VC players say from that. First of all, Arcane Compendium, what did change? They put dominant on the crystal ball that was seen as quite powerful now and had some clarification. They changed Heroes Art from AP3 to AP2, but decreased the points, which I think makes sense, because the idea of Heroes Art is to make normal heroes a bit better in combat. So that was maybe slightly too good for the intention behind Heroes Art. So I think this is definitely a good change. And they changed also Spirit of the Wood. I think it was not clear whether or not they could cast that as a against the enemy unit engaged in combat, meaning it could break the steadfast. So they explained that if the target is an enemy unit engaged in combat, the spell has no effect. Basically, you cannot break steadfast with that. That was the precision that was made. Let's start with Ogre Khans. So we are with a book, to my understanding, as a mid-tier. So we see a couple of good changes, everything going down slightly. It's not a lot, it's 5 points here and there. They changed Firebrand, so this will be a bound spell, not an additional spell, which is, it allows you to get double Fireball, which is nice, but you need to cast Fireball with 2 dice. Is it better, worse? It's hard to say. It's good that it's automatic to cast, so it's maybe better for the Adept and Apprentice, because it allows you to get an Apprentice with Fireball and with double Fireball. Maybe it's nice. On the Apprentice, I think it's better. Adept as well, maybe. But on the Master, to my understanding, it's slightly worse than before. So maybe that was to encourage a bit more the Apprentice with Firebrand, because for a cheap price, like 180 plus 30, you get double Fireball. Not bad. Yetifus goes down, and then we have the core unit that goes down just a little. It's nice. You see, nothing crazy. They just picked the unit that were seen a bit less according to the data and just applied a flat decrease of points. So, yeah, nothing too crazy. I was slightly surprised that the Mercvets got down again. It's not a lot, but it's the same than other unit. But as you can, it's not surprise for me that the Yetis were within. The Bombardiers are getting very, very cheap. Even unit of 6 or 8 are getting quite cheap. Thunder Cannon is also a slight surprise because cannon are good. Here I think they corrected a mistake, which was because you can choose for each weapon which shooting weapon you want. So it was actually an increase of 20 points if you pick double crossbow, which I think was not the original intention. But yeah, I think what surprised me slightly is maybe Mercvets going down, but maybe that was just because they are so glass cannon that they want to make them slightly cheaper. But yeah, I mean, these are also nice changes for the Ogre Khan. Obviously, as you will see after, they have less changes than, for example, Beast Earth and also VC that are bottom tier. So it's not a lot of changes, it's not a lot of points. For example, to the list that I played at Bellum Lacum, it's like out of core I win maybe 20 points, and then in core something similar. So it won't change completely the list, I guess. But some things are getting more interesting. I think I would have liked to see something to encourage a bit more on Wild Earth. For me, it's slightly below in comparison to normal list due to the restriction. So I would have liked to see something done on Wild Earth. Maybe decrease the Wild Earth option would have been something good. And I don't know, maybe the Tusker mount also on the Hunter. Again, a small increase by 5 points would have been nice maybe. But that's small details. So overall, quite happy with that. And then we have the ID. They finally corrected, which was a big mistake, because on the first update they decided to increase blunderbuss and shield on the warrior, but they didn't increase enough the bastion, and they decided to reverse that. So that was a smart correction. They increased the bastion a lot, 40 points, 40 points, 40 points, and they decreased again to the old price blunderbuss shield, because almost nobody was playing blunderbuss shield without the bastion. So I think this makes perfectly sense. This is getting quite expensive, so I think it will be less an auto include, and this is a good news. Also very good news, the change on Citadel Guard getting slightly cheaper. As you can see, they make especially model with hand weapon shield cheaper, and a weapon option same as before. Just 15 points on the base cost is getting decreased by 15 points on the base cost, which makes sense. And then they improve a little bit and forces. Totally fair. A slight comment on for me regarding Infernal Dwarves, because I see a lot of comments of people complaining because we get another nerf and not a lot of, yeah. How is, according to me, what's my view on the power level from the ID? I think it's really decent at the moment. The book is still quite good. Personally, I'm very happy with the book. I think the internal balance is quite good. Externally, we are definitely competitive, so I think we shouldn't complain too much as ID player. Personally, I'm quite happy with the pricing and stuff, and I didn't expect more buffs for the ID. I think our power level is quite good, and we belong to the top tier. So, fair adjustment to the book for me. Then we have Beast Earth. So, lot of changes. As you can see, the difference between ID, not a lot. Middle from Ogre Khan, which are mid-tier, and then here, Beast Earth. So, that's also my understanding of the tier, and you will see VC is along the same way. What have we got here? So we got an ambush option on the general beast lord. So they wanted to improve ambush, and like my mate Lichmeister told me, ambush got a lot of increase because basically we have the price of Wildhorn herd, that decrease, throwing weapon that decrease, discipline banner that decrease, and the number of models that you can put in ambush augment. So it's like a 3 or 4 buffs on the ambush option that you can get. So maybe that will lead in combination with that to new builds with strong ambush. So I'm curious to see. He mentioned also that the fact that most of the character got down in price means that now you can field also a cheaper minimal character setup, or maybe get more character also within the section, which could allow also to play only a few character, because you need leadership 9, you need a BSB, so you can play maybe with less character and then instead have more unit on the tables. That could be something. It also, it's quite interesting the fact that Minnow Warlords goes down by 10. As a reminder, on the last update it went down also by some points, but the paired weapon option went up. And what he mentioned to me, Lichmeister, is the fact that now maybe we might see more build with great weapon on the Warlord, because with reroll to hit battle focus, don't care that much about parry, so that could be a good way to get a cheaper Warlord but still quite effective in close combat. And then the rest, regarding special category, couple of points going down everywhere, so this is nice. He mentioned also to me that we might see maybe more MMU type of list, especially thinking about the Razor Tusk herd. Like unit of 6 is very, very cheap. And maybe last but not least, we have the monster category that gets some good decrease. Obviously that's a key part of the Beasters book. I think you need, in most of the lists, need those monsters to work properly. Obviously we saw some strange build, especially from the Poland guy that plays some big blocks of Longhorn herds and like 3 or 4 big blocks with a very strong magical setup. So that's still a valid list that got some nice point decrease, but again, the monster in most of the lists are there, and they are a bit less expensive, allowing you to feel those mid-price monster a bit more. So that will be also a good improvement for them. So that's what he mentioned to me. So quite interesting, lot of changes, but not a lot of points as you can see. But still, overall on the list, it could mean like 50 or 80 or 100 points less on the list, which is still quite significant. And maybe a last point regarding Beastard. I think there is definitely a new type of list that will be possible thanks to this change, because basically now the amount of ambush that you can put between that and the other change regarding the ambush, basically you can put almost all your army in ambush. You can put like, I think the max is like 2,700, something like that. So you could put a Beast Lord in ambush, or some Mage in ambush, a BSB in ambush, and just field on table like a couple of monsters. I think it's possible to put like 5 monsters and the rest everything in ambush, more or less. So there is a crazy new type of list that could be possible that we might see on the table. It might surprise people, I think, because we are not used to face only 5 monsters that move really well and then all the rest in ambush. So I'm really looking forward to see if Beastard come out with a new type of list that are focused mainly on ambush. Vampire. Last but not least. So we have this big change on Strigoi Vampire that was explained at the beginning. Basically, since in the 3's Death category there is a huge decrease on the Varkolak by 20 points, they wanted to avoid the fact that Strigoi can... like they explained at the beginning, they wanted to move away this factor vanguarding their star. So that was the first issue. And then due to the decrease in points in multiple units, they wanted to make sure that you cannot do a big Death Star with multiple Vampire that can all Vanguard, plus Varko like that Vanguard, and have a very aggro style of list. That wasn't the purpose of Vampire Covenant, sorry. Regarding the other changes. So some nice decrease in points. Like Lichmeister mentioned to me, he told me, don't forget that the Vampire, most characters are also Mage, and they were impacted negatively by the change in Magic with increase in price, Adept, Master, and so on. If you check, for example, Courtier, Vampire Count, they had some, they were impacted by that. So it's nice to see some decrease to compensate a little bit that aspect. In core, no big changes. They don't have so many impact. Special, it's nice to see the Bar Guard coming down. basically makes the Barrow Star slightly more attractive than before. It was already picked by some players. It's a very solid unit, so we might see it even more. Lichmeister was surprised by the fact that the Ghast comes down, but I think it's like me with a Mercenary Veteran. We are a bit influenced by the fact that we play a lot against French and Swiss players that I think in the French meta overall we like Ghast, we like Mercvets, and that's why we see them a lot, and we were a bit surprised by this additional decrease, but maybe this, it's probably the case. Our view doesn't reflect the overall worldwide meta. We only have a view mainly focused on what happened in the national side, and that's why maybe we are a bit surprised by some of the changes. So yeah, flat decrease on most of the stuff. Surprised to see that they decrease again the chaff. For me, it's maybe the best chaff piece in the game. I really love the Great Bats, so that comes down. And yeah, Lichmeister told me also he was quite happy to see the Chariot coming down, because they all have a very specific role, basically in the army, very different role, and they are quite important in the way they allow a type of list to be played. So he was quite happy about that. And also worth mentioning the fact that Swiftdeath, which is the category where you have the impact, the fact that a lot of the unit comes down in price. Some of them really welcome, like the Wind Reaper, for example, will allow new combo, more impact in the list, which is very welcome. And also, he mentioned to me the fact that some of the models like went down by 3, like here and here, instead of other army. Even like Beastrod that went down rather by 1 or 2 is a slight difference, but still important. Also, you can see here Ghast -3. So this couple of additional point down could meant that you can fit in some unit an additional Vampire Spawn, additional I don't know, Ghast or stuff like that. So that's also quite interesting. So overall, I think on his list that he played at Interregio last year, he lost like 100 points, which is still quite significant. But yeah, I think it was a welcome change for the VC, because they were quite low in the ranking, basically, as you saw at the beginning. So to sum it up, I'm very happy with the changes overall. I think they make sense, and if you compare this balance update to the balance update that you had last year, I think this is much better, because last year they tried to shaken a bit the meta, to rebalance stuff, but as you saw from the ranking, basically the top army remained top army. So I think here they try even harder to rebalance, to change things. They were a bit creative, they had some additional decrease on list, and that might have an influence. So I'm really looking forward to see how the list evolves, how the meta evolves, but yeah, I'm quite happy about what they did. And maybe also in conclusion, so regarding ID, like I said, I understand the frustration of some ID player that say, okay, we had a lot of addition, we had a lot of successive increase with the lab and then point update. This update, like you saw, we didn't have a lot of increase, only the Bastion. If I compare, for example, my WTC list from last year to the points that it's worth now, it's like almost 300 points more. So it's big, and that's why it's influencing people in a bad way. They say, oh, I lost so many points, but it doesn't change for me a lot. It's 1 unit less, but overall I still think ID are in a very good place, and I'm quite happy that we move in the gold version, like I mentioned already in one of my previous videos. But I think the power level is still quite good. And yeah, I think it's a good book at the moment, and it's fair, and it's still well balanced. So definitely I'm not complaining at all about the ID book at the moment, and I understood the change on the Bastion. I think make totally sense, because it's a very strong model, basically. Ogre Khan, yeah, some nice changes. We will see. I share a little bit the view of I heard in one of Abarazu's video last year that when he made his list for every book, he said that Ogre Khan, they were sometimes hard to figure out what are the good matchup and the bad matchup. So indeed, maybe they needed also to be slightly increased. That's the couple of buffs that they received during this update is nice. It wasn't too big. The list didn't change much. We won a couple of points, but not much. So I think they were already well balanced, already in a decent spot last year, and they just got a slight buff, but not too much, shouldn't change too many things. I still think they are at a decent place in the meta overall. They are very playable. I love them. I love the book at the moment, and I think the balance was quite well done. And then yeah, Beastard and VC, I think this couple of buffs were welcome, basically. Beastard especially was an army that was struggling. I would have maybe expected even slightly more buffs for Beastard in comparison to VC. For example, for me, VC are slightly in a better shape or spot or power level than Beastard, but this is also influenced, to my feeling, this is also influenced by the fact that a good part of the data is taken from team tournament, and what is the role of a VC in a team tournament? It's very often not to be the top scorer, but also to be very solid, point retention, stuff like that. Like you saw in my team tournament when we had a Lichmeister list, in a lot of cases when we needed someone to stop other army or to be thrown the bus a little bit, we were happy to throw the VC because it's very, very solid. So maybe the power level and the average point that VC got last year in their battle and so on is also influenced by the role of the army within some team tournament. So I think this is also could be a factor, but I would definitely see Beastard in a lower power level as VC at the moment, and I would have expected maybe slightly more decrease on Beastard, if I might say. But we'll see. Maybe the new possible list, Mass Ambush, will shaken things up, will make a new crazy Beastard list. So I'm really looking forward to see what this type of list could do in the future, and yeah, we'll see. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you and you were happy to see the changes, and you are happy with the changes. Overall, it's mostly, like you understood, decreases a bit overall, so should be nice to read for most of the player. Thanks a lot for watching, and talk to you soon on my channel. Bye bye.